I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my heart. I've got the joy, 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 joy down in my heart, down in my heart.
That surely does sound like they have the joy, 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 joy down in their heart. Doesn't it, right? Like that was like, it just made you, it inspired you. You're like, man, I just can't wait to go smile and be happy with other people, right? No, not so much? Yeah, because it didn't sound like it at all. It actually is the very antithesis of joy. You hear that and you're like, I don't think you believe the very words that you're saying. And over the next few weeks, we're going to look at what it means to truly embrace joy. And I think if we polled America, if we polled you guys today in second service, and if we put it out on the internet and polled everybody, I don't think there's a single person that would be like, I just don't want to be joyful. I just want to be angry all the time. Like, no, like everybody would be like, I think I want to be joyful. I think I want to be happy. It is what we would make it synonymous with. I think that we want, another word for joy would be pleasure. I think we want those things. But often, what we say we want and what we actually embrace are two very different things. And over the next few weeks, we're going to really dive in because we could sit and tell, like we've done in the past and go like, we're just going to walk through the Christmas story for a few weeks, which would be great. And it's a beautiful story. But at the end, where it would get kind of pushed to as the Christmas story ensues and as it gets done is it's pushing us to a joy, a hope in something greater. And if you're a believer today, if you're someone who said, I committed my life to Christ, I'm following him, I've been baptized, like hopefully you've embraced what it means to be joyful. To be happy in who God designed you. And if you're sitting here this morning, you go, I haven't made that decision yet. I'm still kind of teetering on that, and I'm not quite sure whether or not I want to follow this Jesus guy. My hope is over the next few weeks that you would come to a place where you go, I think you've made a compelling reason for why I should follow Jesus. And so no matter where you fall on the spectrum, this series is for you, either encouraging you and maybe fostering up inside of you some of the joy that's kind of fallen out. People see it in their marriages all the time. They're like, they stand before each other and they smile and they're like, I do. I'm like, I love you too. And they're crying and they're happy and they kiss and they fall in love and all those things. And then 5 years go by, 10 years go by, and then everybody's wearing sweatpants and, and then they're like, oh, you sleep on that side, I'll sleep on this side and we'll be good. And they're, in there and wake up in the morning, I love you too. All right. Going about their business. And then we need to remember the joy that we had at first. But I think life hands us some interesting things. When circumstances from everything from our job to our relationships to for crying out loud, and we talk about it a lot because it's so prevalent with social networking. It's very easy, and even with current events that are happening now, if you log on, it is just a firestorm of things, and all you should do is probably just log off and go watch a comedy or something. It's just so crazy. And so how do we embrace joy even when it's hard? Well, if you have a Bible, we're going to actually look at that today. It's over in the book of James, chapter 1. James is in the New Testament of the Bible, and so the Bible's broken up into Old and New Testament. If you're not familiar with that, you can turn to your table of contents, look for James, look for New Testament, find James, chapter 1, and we're going to be in the first few verses of James. And so if you have a digital Bible, you can download that in your app store, type in James, and then go to chapter 1, and we're going to be in verse 2, looking at what does it mean to really embrace joy as God designed. You guys ready? A couple of you guys are. You need to follow that guy. They're like, yeah! He's like, he just went Braveheart on the scripture reference today. He's like, freedom! All right, we're going to do this for you, man. Okay, here we go. James chapter 1, starting in verse 2. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters. So he's referring to people who had followed Jesus. And so if you're here this morning going like, I'm not quite sure I'm there yet, don't worry, we're giving you an out here. Consider it pure joy whenever you face trials of many kinds. Oh yeah, this is going to get fun today. Because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Verse 4, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete. None of us really like that mature word very much. Mature and complete, not lacking anything. Why don't you pray with me? God, today as we dive in and we look at what it means to pursue and embrace joy, man, we need it. In a world, and let's maybe boil it down a little more, in our culture here in the United States, we celebrate what we're thankful for only to go out the next day and push and shove for things we don't need. And then we spend a holiday season buying bunches of things for people that they probably don't need. And we're searching for a false sense of joy. Not that any of those things and gifts and generosity are bad, but let us find the truth today. Each and every one of us. It's through your Son we pray. Amen. How many of you guys know what this is? Any seen one of these before? Yeah? No? Anybody? What is it? It's a bell. Yeah, you do the little thing. And for those of you guys who are ready to box, you're like, what? Let's fight somebody. Let's do it. I was actually told that somebody used to box that's going to be in second service, and so that'll be fun. He's going to jump up and hurt me. I had never really seen a bell like this very often. Like, when you go out to restaurants and you don't walk up to a desk and they have these bells anymore. That's not the type of thing that you see. And so my first real experience with one of these bells was actually one of the most traumatic experiences that I ever had. I get in my job in being in ministry, I get the chance to travel pretty frequently to different conferences and meetings and things like that. And early on in ministry, I was traveling to this student ministry leader conference. And so I did student ministry for about a decade. And so I wanted to see how I could get better at leading middle schoolers. Because if you've ever been around middle schoolers, you know you need to figure out how you can be better at leading middle schoolers. And so I went to this conference, so I wanted to learn and just see how I could get better at this. And so it's in California, in Southern California, and so we fly in, and I had done the reservations. This is back before you could really get on Expedia and see all the different stuff. It was like you just kind of hoped. You looked up in these things called a phone book, and you kind of looked, and you're like, oh, okay, that kind of looks good because they have a neater ad than the rest. And so I'm going to pick that one and call up, get the reservation. I walk in, and this hotel is amazing. I mean, I walk in, and it has all the little inboxes for people that are staying there a little bit longer. I was like, everyone's dressed to the nines. I'm like, I'm in the wrong spot. I'm this beach, long-haired kid from Virginia Beach, and I walk into this, and I'm like, I'm out of place here. And so I walk in, and no one is at the desk. So I'm like, all right, I'll just wait, I guess. And I look over at the desk, and there's a little sign that says ring bell for service. And so I walk up, and I hit the thing, and out comes this guy who looks fairly perturbed that I've hit the bell. And he walks in, he's like, hello. And I'm like, hi, I'm here to check in. He's like, okay. And he gets on his, little thing and starts doing his stuff. I'm like, this guy isn't really happy about his job. Okay. And so he does his thing, get my room, and I go up to the third floor, do the little, and this is this hotel's fancy. And so they didn't do the card keys. You had the actual fancy, neat little key. So you do the key, you get in, and I get in and realize that my air isn't working. And if you've ever been to California, when it's warm, you realize that you need air. Okay. I love the heat is just as much as the next person. I hate all of this cold and winter and snow and stuff. I could never live in Buffalo, where God just said, I don't really like you, and just gave everything to them. And I don't know what happened. I just don't want to ever move there. And if you're from Buffalo, don't stay here long, because we don't want to get that here. And so I just hang out. We'll fist bump and then go back up there. And so I'm there, and I'm like, I need this AC. I'm dying. And so I go to the desk, and sure enough, I walk up, and I hit the bell, and this guy, I won't use the phrase that I think he was thinking, but he walks out, he's like, what? And I'm like, time out. Like, and I'm kind of like Zach Morris, he's like, time, it does the thing. Not everything stops though. And I'm like, hey, and this is where like the sarcasm that I used to wield as like a spiritual gift, I've slowed down on that now. But I was like, hey, I'm not quite sure you got the memo, but I'm a paying guest. You work here. I ring the bell, you help serve me, now you yell at me. And he's like, oh, so now you know what we have around here for as far as policy? And I'm like, whoa, time out. I was like, I just want to get my air fixed or move to another room. And it's like, oh, well, what's wrong with the room? I'm like, the air is broken. You know, like Chris, like, do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? Like this kind of like, this, just please, for the love of all that's holy, like I'm trying to be very nice and very patient. I'm like, because I know there's a bunch of other pastors and the thing, and the last thing you want, it's like when you cut people off and you have the Jesus fish on there, they'll be like, ugh. And so it's like, and they know you've done it, which by the way, if you're doing that, take your forefront sticker off the back of your car, okay? Just if you're not gonna abide by the rules and live like Jesus, at least take the sticker off your car. All right, that's done. And so they know there's a bunch of pastors there, and so I'm trying to be very nice and whatever. And we're walking through it, and I just realized, and so like I kind of have these moments where I'll ask the question that no one else wants to ask, and like if I'm in public, and so I'm just like, "Are you okay?" And he was not expecting that at all, and so he was like, "What?" I was like, are you all right? Like, you seem like on edge. And I tried to disarm with humor at that point. I'm like, I just hope you don't have any firearms back there. Like, is there anything, okay, can I call someone for you? Do you need like ice cream? Like, I'm just going through like a list of things like whatever. Do we need to bring in a fluffy dog to make you happy? And he's like, oh, and he starts kind of laughing. I'm like, thank goodness, because this guy's gonna hurt me. And he's like, I've just had a really bad day. And every time that bell rings, it's just one more, I'm like, oh, I gotta deal with somebody else. And I'm like, you could think of it that way, or every time somebody rings that bell, you could think, man, somebody probably is having a rotten day. I get to help make their day better. And so every time somebody rings that bell, you get the chance to turn around. Like when I came up here to ask about my air, you had the opportunity to make my day awesome. And I could have told your boss that everything was great. I'm not going to do that now, but you had the opportunity to do that, and every time that bell rings, you could either say, it's annoying, I'm over it, or, man, I get the chance every single time to help somebody. You and I are the same way. We're exactly the same way. We go through life and everything is kind of tracking, and all of a sudden the bell rings and we're like, oh. And the first time we might not be like that. We might kind of engage it and go, maybe it's with our kids or with our spouse or with a coworker. They're like, hey, I need your help, and something's going on. They're like, okay, whatever. And then they ask again. Then they ask again. And then something happens again. And by like the fifth time, you're like, I know I really love Jesus, but come on, like get it together. And you start thinking those things, and you've never said it out loud. Okay, let's be real, but you've thought it. And then things happen and happen and happen, and eventually you go, man, a year goes by, months go by, and you go, man, where is my joy? And I would say this, and this is your tweetable, your Facebook update, your point. If you don't go home with anything else, I want you to walk away with this, is that God's joy, his joy never fails. It absolutely never fails. And it is not passing or fleeting or any of those things. It is a promise. It is permanent, okay? And so if you don't walk away with anything else today, that his joy never fails. And it is not passing, but a promise and permanent. And I would say even more than that, as we kind of dive into this, is that you and I have a decision. We have a joy decision, okay? And you might be like, no, it really is. It depends on the circumstances. And I would actually like to give pushback on that and say, I love you and I care about you. But joy is a decision, and when you follow Christ and you say that my joy goes up and down, I'd have to say that you're wrong. Now, that's not to say that you don't have bad days, okay? I'm not going to say that we get here and everything's like, oh, walking down the yellow brick road and rainbows and butter. There's a bluebird on my shoulder. Any of that stuff, okay? We're not saying that, all right? So don't go home and go, Jason said that joy happens, and even though I've had hard times, that I cannot deal with and be in the hard times. That's not what I'm saying. Okay? Let's make sure that we can have a joy in Christ even when things are hard, even when things don't make sense, even when our kids have gone off the rails and all we want to do is grab them and bring them back because we know what's good for them, and they go, no, I don't want to do that. And actually, I don't want to do that, and I don't know if I want to do anything for you. And we go, oh. And it breaks our heart. Even when our spouse, we feel like we're tracking, and then we slowly start going a little further, and before too long, we're in two completely separate places, and we wonder how in the world we got there. You go, Jason, how am I supposed to be joyful in that when we're not on the same page? I'm not asking you to be joyful about the fact that that happened. What I'm saying is that you and I, if we've made a decision for Christ and we're following Him, we have the indwelling Holy Spirit in us, and it actually talks about this in the New Testament of the Bible. Paul writes about this. He says, the fruit of the Spirit, these things that happen are love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentle self-control, all of these things that move through. One of those promises is that we would be joyful. And so I find a hard time when I see Christians, people who follow Jesus, they always walk around like this. You're a Christian? Yeah, I love Jesus. And walk around, and people, and they wonder, like, I don't understand why nobody wants to come and go to church with me. I'm like, really? Because I could tell you, because you walk around, and I would kind of label this like Eeyore syndrome. Just, everything's hard. Everything's bad. And let's face it, like, if anything, and this is what I love about Paul, who writes much of the New Testament. He's an early church planter. He writes a bunch of books and letters to churches. Like, Paul kind of walks through. He said, if anybody has any right to complain, look at me. Like, I follow Jesus, and I've been shipwrecked. I've been flogged. I've been stranded. I've been all of these different things. He's like, and I still have joy. When's the last time you've been shipwrecked? When's the last? None of you have played out that movie with Tom Hanks, okay? You haven't sat and looked at Wilson for weeks and months, all right? And you may say, Jason, you don't understand my circumstances. Okay, like we want to play that game for a while? We could do that. I could do that with you. I could say, man, my wife and I 6 years ago, in the same time frame, we took over a role at the church. The church was $180,000 in debt. We were pregnant with our first kid, who we also had a miscarriage with. Then not too long after that, after we had another baby and everything seemed to be going good, my wife changed jobs. I changed jobs. Then her mom passed away, and then we had to let go of a couple staff members, and things were hard and all that stuff. We could start tracking into all the things that send people into a nervous breakdown. We hit every one of them in like a 6-month span. And I'm not saying that to go, oh, feel sorry for us. I'm saying that through all of that, were times tough? Absolutely. I'm not going to sit up here and go, when you lose a child, that everything was fine. It wasn't fine. I was angry. I can't tell you that everything was fine when years ago, before the church got healthy and thriving and all this other stuff, that it was hard. I'm not going to say, like, it was great, we really liked it. I loved having our staff say, hey, all of you guys write your checks back because we can't pay you. Like, that was super fun. Yeah, like, no, it was hard, but I still had joy. I still had joy because I had a joy in something that does not go away, a joy in someone that does not shift, a joy in someone that is solid and firm and does not move, a joy that cannot be robbed from me. But it's a choice on whether or not I wake up and whether or not you wake up each day. We say, I'm going to cling to the promise and the hope that God has given me in Him. Each and every day, it's a choice. And so you and I have a joy decision. Jump over into some of these passages that we looked at in James, and they'll be here up on the screen, to really look at these. Consider, and you can highlight that, circle it, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. Now, we hear this and we're like, for real? Like, that's our first thing, like, or we throw our hands up in the air and we go, come on, man. Like, joy in trial. Have you seen the stuff that I've dealt with? Like, I've probably sat with somebody, I've either dealt with it or sat with somebody who has. Now, you would go like, but it's hard. It's real difficult to do that. And I kind of named some of that stuff that my wife and I went through. But this is the thing. The reason that we look at it and say it's a joy decision, that first word, consider. It doesn't say like, plenty of other words could have happened there. It says, consider. It's milling over and thinking of and beginning to move to a place where we go, wait, it is pure joy whenever we face trials of many kinds. And we go, I don't know about that because I've hit trials and they were real hard. But I want to jump into the next piece of this. It's in verse 3. Because, and this is what frustrates a lot of people, it says, you know. Be like, I'm not quite sure I know. You know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. The testing of your faith produces perseverance. How many of you, in hindsight, show of hands, could say that when you went through something afterwards that you were able to see, even though it was difficult, good that came out of a hard situation? If you didn't raise your hand, the majority of the room said, I've seen it. I've seen it. Why? Because no one ever grows when everything's great. Not a single person. All right? Go to the gym sometime and see you just watch. Like, your muscles don't get bigger when you're just like, 2-pound weight, baby, all day long. All day long. No, it doesn't get bigger, all right? It's you get a little bigger and a little more, I don't know, because I don't lift weights, because I'll just run, because I'm like, I don't need to be like Arnold, get to the chopper. And so you lift, and what do? You grab a bigger weight, and a bigger weight, and a bigger weight, and eventually what do? It actually tears the muscle. And then the muscle heals, and then we're sick and twisted, and we do it again, and we do it again, and then we have to walk through doorways sideways. Because we do it, why? Well, but there's a sense of pain that goes through to a place where you get to that feeling, that physique, in that workout. And I look at people who do that, and there's a part of me that's envious of just the sheer diligence and perseverance that they have to be able to get to a place they go, yes, I know. I know that it's hard work to work through to a place where that it's going to produce the right result. And so you may be sitting in a trial right now that you haven't told a soul, or you've told one person, and the only reason you've told them is because the weight is so heavy that you're just like, I can't do this. I need to tell someone. I'm not ready for them to tell me what to do. Actually, honestly, I don't even want them to tell me what to do. But just the weight of this, the sheer magnitude of this is just overwhelming. And I would tell you that as you work through that, whatever it is, you may be working through a divorce right now. You may be working through a secret addiction that nobody knows. Not a single person knows. And you're trying your best to hide it, but people know. The people around you know that something's different. They might not know exactly what's going on, but they know. They know that something is off kilter with you. And so as we walk through these, as we see this happening, we say, you know what? You know that the testing of your faith produces the best result. Each and every one of us knows that. It's why we teach kids that. It's why as we work through sporting programs, things like that, work hard. Why? Because even though it's hard and even though it's difficult, it's going to teach in you the best thing that you need. And so as we look and we change our mindset of how we view what it means to go through trials and go through things that are hard. I know it's hard. I've sat with some of you guys where tears for weeks, months, sometimes even years about situations that are going on. I can promise you without a shadow of a doubt that when you follow God, that one day it gets better. And you may be sitting there going, Jason, I don't know if I buy that. I'm walking proof of it. We could march person after person up here and show you that God moves in amazing ways. That we're not promised that we won't encounter things. And actually, even in that first verse before it, flip over to that other verse real quick. Go back a slide. It says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. It doesn't say, if some of you, maybe a little bit. It says, whenever. Like you're going to face them, all right? This existence, every single person's going to hit hard times, and so how do we move in it? Flip over there to verse 4, a couple slides over. This is what it says. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. We actually have to get out of the way as God is moving. We actually have to remove ourselves from being the very wall that God's like pushing through, and he's like, I'm going to push through, but you're real stubborn. Like, have you ever been around somebody that's stubborn? Yeah? Everybody been around stubborn? Now, don't nudge them, okay? If you're like, yes, actually, I'm sitting with them right now. Don't do that, okay? You'll be sleeping on the couch. But, like, when you're around somebody that's stubborn and you're trying to help them, and you're trying to do that. I watch my kids all the time, and my daughters, especially when we're walking through a parking lot, like one of the things that we say is like, hold a hand and don't run out. And so we have a younger one who just is like, she gets out and it's like a jailbreak, okay? Like that, well, you remember watching that show Prison Break? And they're just like, as soon as she gets out of the door, she's like, whatever, and moving around, you're like, whoa, like you've been outside before, okay? This is not new to you. Like all of a sudden, she's like loses her mind. And I'm like, you hold a hand, or she's like, I don't know what to do. I keep moving. And I'm like, baby, stop. And eventually, like, there's just this moment that is just like, hold back. And we have to look at here's what we have to do. And you get down on her level and you begin to talk to her like, hey, we have to follow because you could get really hurt. And it's just this stubborn, like, I just want to do. And it's getting in the way of her learning valuable lessons. And there's this moment where we have to be able to, and it's this what God does this with us, is he gets down, and it's almost like he has to get down on our level and talk to us and say, hey, I know that this is hard. I'm actually setting things in place that even though this circumstance that I did not create, because we live in a fallen world where bad things happen to good and bad people, that even though this circumstance has befallen upon you, I'm going to use it to the good if you would just surrender. And we don't like that word, surrender. We hear that and we're like, I don't want to surrender. And especially guys don't like that word at all, because as soon as guys hear that word, they're like, because we're carnal in our instincks. And I'm not picking on guys. This is just how we are. We hear surrender and we're like, I'm not surrendering for nothing. You know, like we talked about earlier, Braveheart, freedom. And, like we're conquerors. We are fighters at our core. And so to hear the word surrender, we're like, I don't know about that. But God's looking at us and he's sitting down with us and he's like, I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not sitting up there with lightning bolts ready to strike. I just want to have a conversation with you. That I know you're going through this and I know that it's hard. But you know why you're not experiencing the joy that I have for you? It's because you're not following the one that can bring you joy. Some of you guys need to hear that this morning. I know I needed to hear it years ago when I was searching and trying to fill joy with all sorts of stuff. When you have that joy that is a little less complete, and you go, I wonder why I can't find true joy, I can tell you. Because you're not following Jesus with all your heart, mind, and soul. You are not surrendered to the one that brings complete joy. And so you ask yourself, how do I find it? How do I navigate to a place where I can follow him? Well, it says, get out of the way, break down that wall, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. You're going to experience this exact feeling you probably experience at Thanksgiving and you'll experience on Christmas dinner. You go through and you begin to eat and eat and eat and you hit that wall. And that wall is supposed to tell you, stop because I know what's good for you. And you're going to go, no, you don't, because there's still fruit salad and more turkey and more ham and I can smell the cheesy potatoes. I know what my body's telling me, but my mind's telling me no. You get through that and sorry, I had to throw it back a little bit. And so you move through this and you want to press through. Everything inside of you is saying like, no, you need to stop. And you go, no, I think I know better. So you keep on. What happens? It destroys you. It's awful for you. And God's getting down and he's saying, listen, you need to get out of the way. I'm trying to help you here. I'm trying to walk you through this. I know you can't do it by yourself. That's why you cry at home. That's why you cry with others. That's why life is difficult. And it's going to keep being difficult for a while. But I can give you a hope and a joy to move through this. And he sits down with us. And we have a choice. We have a joy decision to make. Am I going to follow the one who created me and can give me the best and most perfect joy possible? Or am I going to try to do it on my own? And that's the choice that we have. Am I going to cling to the creator of joy, or I'm going to try to create it myself? I can tell you, because I've been there and I've watched people do it, creating your own joy will feel good at first, but it doesn't last. It doesn't last. And so in the midst of storm and in the midst of trial, how do we navigate well? There's this book that you may have read in school or been forced to read in school called Little Women. The author, Louisa May Alcott, in one of the stories, she wrote this, and I think it's true. I actually saw somebody Facebook or tweet out something similar, but it comes from her. And it deals with sailing. And we talk about storms, we talk about life, we talk about joy in the midst of trial. I'm not afraid of storms, she says, because I know how to sail my ship. I want you to hear that. I'm not afraid of storms because I know how to sail my ship. You've tried for a long time to navigate joy on your own merit. And I commend you for trying, because we all try, but it will not satisfy. But when we wrap ourselves in the joy of Christ, when we surrender to Him, when we give our lives to Him, when we're baptized into Him, we begin to have a hope and a joy in someone, in something greater that does not shift and does not fade. Would you pray with me?